Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Game Changers, the WAA Podcast. I'm your co-host, Joseph Yaksich, joined by my other co-host, Alec Yaksich, and we are pleasured with the special appearance of our first guest, Brian Moore. Brian, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, there's not much of an introduction. I'm Brian. I live in Lincoln, Nebraska. I play Division III college football at Nebraska Wesleyan. And yeah, I got
Nice.
2 kids, got a wife, got a dog sitting in the corner.
Murphy. I
About
feel so
it.
left out. You guys both
Um,
have dogs in the background, and I'm sitting here with Star Wars.
Makes life
Hey,
better,
man.
man. You gotta have dogs.
It does make life better.
Brian, tell them about your position wise, everything like from like your 5 years, right? You played
Played 4 years. So
4 years.
I went to high school with you guys at Concordia. Played 2 years, junior and senior year. Didn't really get any legit looks from anywhere outside of Wesleyan, Wartburg, and like one other school for football. And I didn't really want to play football in college. I graduated in 2015 from high school, so well before NIL stuff was enacted. So I wasn't getting runs of hitting me up while I was at Wesleyan like I see some guys now. They're doing runs of promotions or Culvers or just canes. We always had like a Caniac challenge. We got like 10 first downs. So I wasn't super familiar with the NIL side of things up until one of my friends worked for Open Doors. His name's Braley Keller. So he's taught me a lot, and I've learned a lot from him, from just the name, image, likeness field, and everything that comes with that. So he's been a really good resource at Open Doors, just to follow along and hear what he has to say. And he's always doing big presentations and stuff,
That's awesome.
presenting to like the president of the NCAA and just like crazy stuff like that. But yeah, played 4 years at Wesleyan. I graduated from Wesleyan in 2019, so I didn't have to deal with COVID years. I didn't do a medical red shirt, anything like that. I just did my 4 years and got out, got a job in sales, and been at the same place for 6 years now. So
we love that.
It's been good. Oh yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
You also got recruited in basketball too. What?
Yeah, I had some looks for basketball. I went to Wesleyan originally to play both. I wanted to play both basketball and football. That was like not the main reason I picked Wesleyan. Like they got good academics, and at one point they were top, I think 6 in the country for like academic All-Americans all time. When I decided to go there, so they like athletics and academics combined. There was not a ton of schools that, meaning they were up there with, I think Nebraska was one, like Notre Dame was up there, and then like Wesleyan, like Nebraska Wesleyan, which was kind of crazy to me. But yeah, I went there to play basketball and football. Basketball is still my favorite sport. I play at least a couple times a week, 2, 3, 4 times a week. I'll play pickup or men's league or whatever. But yeah, looking back, I do kind of wish I would have played basketball, because when I was a junior, we won the national championship, and I would have been on that team that literally won the national championship in D3 basketball. But instead, I was playing football on a 4-6 team and barely squeaking by at the end of the year, with the way injuries stack up in football versus basketball. So much different sports, but yeah, I wouldn't regret it. You make so many friends playing college football. It's a full-time job, even D3. So yeah.
Sometimes those smaller schools are even like notorious for being harder, like legitimately harder than like bigger schools or whatever. What was your recruiting process like? Because I'll talk about. I have to start with how unconventional and ridiculous mine was, because I I was so determined to play Division One football. I talked to our strength and conditioning coach, Kyrie, and he told me that in the 1990s he had to physically mail out his like VHS tape of his highlight reel to schools that he wanted to like play at or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's actually a really great idea, is like you doing the outreach to the schools that you want to play for. And I was like, okay, so then I went onto Google in like 2015 or 2016 or whatever. And I Googled NCAA Division One schools, like FBS and FCS schools. And I found a list that I could sort by win-loss records. And I sorted by loss records. And I started emailing the worst Division One schools and sending them my tape, because we went to a tiny school. Nobody was looking at a 300 person school to be like, yeah, there's probably a good player there. So like I found the worst D1 schools that I could find, sent them all emails or DMs on Twitter, and was like, hey, I'm interested in playing football. Can we talk or whatever? And it netted really good results. I got to visit like Towson University and Cornell, and there was a bunch on the East Coast that I visited. But then there were bigger ones that I visited. I visited Northwestern. I visited K-State, and and then I ended up having the SDSU coach DM me on Twitter, the defensive line coach DM'd me on Twitter, and he said it was one of the shortest conversations ever. I've since deleted my Twitter, so I wish I could pull up those messages, but it was like one of the shortest conversations ever. He just said they were interested and I should send my transcripts over, and then I sent them over, and they offered me a walk-on spot. And so I never visited the school, never did anything else. I just was like, all right, I'm going to San Diego State. And so I flew out to San Diego, and that was the most unconventional recruiting process ever, because I did 99% of the outreach and didn't like do any of the receptive or whatever. The only school that I talked to who reached out to me came to our high school. It was what's the one in Nebraska? The mid something. What's it called? Midland came to Concordia, their coaches, and they wanted to meet with the seniors, and I met with them in the administrative office, and they asked me a bunch of questions, and I was so dead set on playing D1 football. I didn't really take the meeting very seriously, because I was like, I'm not going to play at Midland. But I distinctly remember from that conversation, there was two coaches sitting across from me, and they're like, what, give us a reason why you shouldn't play for us. And I said, I lead the state in flagrant fouls. And they're like, oh, okay. Great. Thanks for letting us know that. And that was like that was like their, tell us your weakness. What is your weakness? And my weakness was I had every single game that we played in, I got, is it called a flagrant foul? I can't remember. What the hell is it called when you
unnecessary roughness?
Unnecessary roughness. I did something horrible every single game. Personal foul. And that was like I led the state in those and it was horrible. What a terrible statistic to lead the state in something. But that was my response to them when they said that. So that was my unconventional recruiting process. Tell us about what it was like being recruited, and like what does the process of being recruited for football look like for you?
Yeah, it's gonna age me. It's like 10 years ago now that I was getting recruited for college. Like 10 years. Yeah, I do remember once you mentioned that, I was like, oh, I guess I did take some meetings with coaches when I was a senior, which, like, looking back now, I kind of, it wasn't like always on my radar to like play at the next level when I was in like junior high and high school. And my parents didn't come from an athletic background or anything, so I wasn't going to like camps. Even for basketball, I never played AAU until going into my senior year. I played at OSA, and I didn't make the national team. I was just the team right below it. But yeah, I mean, looking back, like I know I took some meetings with Wesleyan was one of them. There's a guy named Jordan Delbaugh that was a receiver coach and special team coach, I think, that came to Concordia. We played at Wesleyan's field when we played the Lincoln schools. So they were at those games and they pulled like me and two or three other guys. Both there's Jackson Twos, Tanner Tarosian.
Nice.
I think one more person that like looking back, like they probably should have played in college. With how like I wasn't our best player my senior year. But yeah, and then basketball wise, it was kind of what you did. Like I had my film, and I took it to a bunch of D2 schools. I was sending it out to coaches. Hillsdale in Michigan was one school I got a good tuition scholarship that I applied for. I can't even remember the name of it, but they're big donors to Concordia High School also.
I think they're a Christian college.
Yeah. Do you remember the name of the family that has that scholarship?
I don't know.
They donated like $2 million to Concordia's athletic
crazy.
facilities or something crazy. And so they were tied to Hillsdale. When I was there for a visit, I set up a meeting with the basketball coaches. I saw their facilities, met with their coaches. And I like coming out of it, like just seeing their facilities and like how well ran it was. That was like my number one spot was like, if I can play basketball at this Division II school, it's cheaper than going to even UNL for me. So I was kind of hounding them with my tape. And they're pretty upfront with me, like, hey, you're 5'10". Our starting point guard is 6'4". So like you've got to be really good at something. And we're looking at like you can shoot like pretty deep, you got a decent percentage, but like we'd have to get you in for a workout even to like have you be on our practice squad, because we already have a scholarship player on practice squad and he's a 6'2" point guard that shoots 40% from three or whatever.
Right.
So it's like the levels to basketball, I just found out there's like way less spots on a team for basketball than there is for football. I mean, you got 12 spots to travel, and a lot of those small schools probably have 5 full ride scholarship for like D2 schools. Whereas football, when I met with Hillsdale, they were one of the schools that were like, yeah, we got a spot for you. You'll be a preferred walk on, whatever. And that was Division II. But I didn't get the vibes I liked from the football program. I was like, if I'm going to go to Hillsdale, I want to play basketball. So yeah, I don't know. I met with some other coaches. Like I was trying to get a workout in at Creighton to be like a practice player at Creighton. Never got that set up. I mean, I was kind of shooting for the stars. I was like, I either want to be on like a D1 practice squad for basketball or football. I never tried out at UNL. I probably could have done that through Steve Warren, who was an awesome connection when we were in high school.
Yeah, it was.
But I mean, I knew going into college that I wasn't going to play professionally at any sport. So my number one priority when I was in those recruiting meetings and putting through applications for schools and whatever was like, it sounds dumb, but like academics. And then if sports came along with it, like I would take advantage of it. So in Wesleyan, kind of just the class sizes, I got to meet the GM of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jason Light. His niece was my grade, Sarah Abbott. She works at like ESPN or something now. She's awesome, like super smart. She's going to do great at whatever she does. But yeah, she was like, do you want to meet my uncle? I was like,
that's
yes.
nuts.
So, I got to ask him some questions. He played at Wesleyan for 2 years. He kind of went the backwards route. He played at UNL for his first 2 years. I don't think he played very much. I think he played though. Like he was like a D1 Husker football player, and
Right.
then decided to transfer his junior year to Nebraska Wesleyan. So he was just like
Wow.
this outstanding player his senior year at Wesleyan. Graduated with, I think it was like a biology degree or something.
Wow.
Got a connection as a
What?
scout with the Dolphins. He knew I don't know.
That's
So
nuts.
when they recruited me from Wesleyan, they're like, "Hey, if you want to do sports,
Yeah.
Tampa Bay Bucks GM actually graduated from Wesleyan." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, like I could be a GM for an NFL team. That'd be pretty
Run a
sick."
team. That's
Yeah,
sweet,
and
dude. I did not
when I
know
met
that.
with him and learned about him, I found out that he didn't do a sport management major. He didn't do a business major. He
Yeah.
literally just found a job as a scout in Miami, bounced around a bunch of different places. He's probably had, I mean, you can look at his Wikipedia or LinkedIn, and it's 50 different jobs.
Wow.
Not actually, probably
Right. Yeah.
20
Yeah.
positions over 30 years. So every year and a half, he's moving up, going from
Wow.
rookie scout to like assistant scout to lead scout to equipment manager to
That's so
and
impressive.
it's such a giant leap to get to be a GM of
Yeah.
an NFL team or an NBA team or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of cool experiences going to a small D3 school that you don't get
Mm-hmm.
some other places. But yeah, I really liked what Wesleyan had to offer, and knowing that I could go there, get a good degree, get a good internship,
Mm-hmm.
and then possibly play football and basketball.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, there's no NIL money, but they had these activity scholarships based on
Yeah.
what activities you did in high school that they could, finagle to get you a little extra money for those
Yeah.
athletes. So it was back in 2015, like 21 grand a year, something like that. UNL would have been 13 grand a year. So it wasn't a crazy difference to go to a private school, private education, play
Right.
football, have 15 to 20 person classrooms.
Yeah.
You actually get to know your professors.
Yep.
Attendance was mandatory, which I was like, oh, that's probably a good thing when I was a senior in high school. And then when I got to my senior year of college, I was like, attendance probably doesn't need to be mandatory for all of these classes. But
Dude,
yeah,
I
it
have
was a good experience.
full on must have suppressed these memories as you were just talking about it. I did an official visit to Wesleyan, and your coaches took me out to some burger joint, and I'm like having flashbacks now of visiting Wesleyan and doing the classic
Was I a freshman there when you
you were a
visited?
freshman and I was a senior in high school, and I visited Wesleyan, and you and your teammates took me out to the town of Lincoln and showed me what it was like to be a Wesleyan football player. I'm like having vivid memories of this now, which is crazy because I completely forgot I visited Wesleyan. And
I don't remember you visiting.
this is weird. There was a bell involved in the middle of the night, in front of some frat house. That was a fun night. I'll say that. I definitely remember that. That's weird, dude. I have not pulled those memories out in a fatty minute. I remember, yeah, dude. That's weird. That's crazy. We had those types of visits at SDSU where basically like if there was a player that the school wanted to have come, they would essentially do the official visit, and then at the end of the night, most of them were overnight visits. At the end of the night, they would drop them off to all of the football players and be like, "Hey, this is a potential recruit. Hang out with them." And for anyone who isn't aware, SDSU is a bit of a party school, and so we had. I remember there was one night that we had a player who came to visit. He was an offensive lineman, and they dropped him off at like 9 p.m. in front of the athletic building. And it was like 5 of us that were there. And the coaches were like, hey, here's whatever his name is. I can't remember who it was. Show him SDSU, have a good time. And they drove away, and we took him to a few parties, and that was a mistake and a disaster. He had to, at like 3 a.m, we had to call the coaches and they had to come pick him up in front of the athletic building. And he was like a huge offensive lineman, and there was like 5 of us lifting him up. He let himself go a little bit too far, and that was the first and only experience I had. I was a freshman, so like this was not of my doing. I was just like a part of the group of other. I wasn't even an offensive lineman. I was a defensive lineman. But I knew one of the offensive linemen who was there. He's like, hey, we're gonna take this recruit out, and so I was present, but I was not complicit in their taking care of this kid or lack thereof. But I remember how much the coaches scolded us, and like we had to run, and basically they killed us with conditioning because we couldn't take care of this recruit. And needless to say, he did not come to San Diego State University. His parents were not super happy about what happened that night. But yeah, I had a similar, way less eventful night at Wesleyan. You guys just took me around and like we just had a good time. It was fun. I got to meet a bunch of people. I got to meet a bunch of the football players. And the Bell story is when we were walking back from one of the parties that we were at as a house party, there was a fraternity that has a bell in the front yard, and apparently you're not supposed to ring it. And this guy that we were with ran up and he rang it, and like everybody from the fraternity like ran out and started chasing us. And it was adventurous. I don't know if you were with us at that part of the night.
I wish I remembered that.
I was with some wide receiver. I can't remember his name. He had a nickname like Ham or something like that. But yeah, that was fun. Huh. It was interesting. Alec, when you got recruited, did you have to, or did you like visit any schools, or like what was your recruiting process like?
I'm like, when you guys were talking, I was trying to remember for myself. I like blank that part of my life, to be honest with you.
Crazy.
Like I honestly do. Like I wasn't like a notable recruit, so it's not like I had schools like flooding or like like big time, like getting flown out or big deal. So yeah, I had similar to like what you guys said of like at Kearney when I going out and going to a party, and they take care of you, take you to a party, you meet the team, you get dinner and such, and did that at Wayne. Just a couple like I think more local in like Nebraska, like D2. But for Hillsdale, I used to like, because like we have a friend that went to Hillsdale, but now since like March Madness of this year, what's that dude's name, Brian? Jack. Yeah, that dude gives me PTSD from being a Kentucky basketball fan. But now every time I hear Hillsdale, I just have straight beef with that school because of him. Like I literally, I hate. So yeah, that just ruins it. But also, yeah, I think for basketball, when you're talking about like trying out for basketball and putting yourself out there in your name, I don't think a lot of people, especially in high school, I think the older you get, you realize it, and the more you meet people and that's in leagues and just networking. Like just because like you play in D1, like everyone thinks like, okay, you're D1, you're good. But D2, D3, even NIA, dude, there are straight dogs, especially like in basketball. Like everyone's good. Like there are a lot of people that could play D1 and even go farther. Like, buddy Kyle at Northwest Missouri State, they had a D2 basketball player of the year for 4 years in a row. I forget his name, but his senior year, coming in his senior year, he got recruited to go to Kansas, Kentucky. Stayed at Northwest Missouri State because he was loyal. He got picked up and went to the NBA and just averaging 30, playing D2, just so that whole like presumption of playing like D2, D3 ball, like, oh, you're not good enough for something is like totally mistaken, because there are so many players that probably just never got the chance to like even be seen or heard, or even maybe academically or however the sense may be that, because it all has to like match up, to when you're 16 or 15 to 18 perfectly in high school to be put in that situation. And the cards aren't drawn perfectly for everyone, that's for sure. So, yeah. But no, I guess like long story short for me, as everyone told you guys when you got recruited, like make sure you love it. Make sure you love the game. I didn't love I didn't love playing. at all. Like I like being with the boys. And I like like playing C1 football. It was fun because you just like dominate everyone. But like I mean I love football. Like but I don't like playing. Like it sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was more just like the saying, kind of like you, Joseph, the whole thing of like I gotta play football. Just to like tell yourself you can do it. Yeah,
Yep.
biggest mistake of my life. Like in respect to you, Brian, and for the people that have played and like actually because dealt it through 4 years, because that's people don't realize the commitment. It's not just like a hobby; it's your life that you have to dedicate to, off season and
Literally
in
a
season
full-time
training.
job. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a full time job, and even more than a full time job. Like you would do more work playing sports than actually probably your actual 40-hour 9 to 5. So people don't realize that. So respect to those people, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
To
nuts.
to go off of that, I was one thing I was thinking of. So our freshman class going into Wesleyan was like 60 kids, and like almost every year, like you don't. I mean, it's about 120 person team. Like by fall camp, by the time it's over, usually there's 10, 15 guys that drop out. They're just fall camp is what it is.
Yep.
And a lot of people, like out of the 50, you go from 50 to like 40 by the end of fall camp freshman year, and then from freshman to sophomore year, you probably go from 40 to about 20 to 25. And so then by your sophomore year, it's usually like 15 guys. By your senior year, there's only like 10 seniors that stick it out
That's
all 4 years.
crazy.
And our senior class, actually, I think it was one of the largest in the last like 10 years at Wesleyan, which I think kind of speaks to there's like it kind of felt like there's somewhat of a culture shift starting to happen at Wesleyan, going from being less of a party school to more of going from the NAIA schedule to now being a full D3 school. It was, which seems backwards, that going from scholarship athletes to D3 non-scholarship athletes, that you would think it would be a step down in competition, but the IAC, which now it's called the ARC conference, it's like one of the best 4 or 5 D3 conferences in the country. Like every year there's at least one team that makes the playoffs, sometimes 2 or 3 for football. Basketball wise, there's always at least 2 or 3 that are in the top 25 in the country. And we're the only Nebraska school, and then it's Iowa schools. Like nobody thinks of Iowa as like an athletic powerhouse. Like you think of 7-3 football games with farm boys with gingers and mustaches and carrying hay bales to practice. But yeah, it is crazy going back to what you're saying about like professional athletes. I'm pretty pumped about the Olympics coming up. So there's a guy named Dylan Travis that went to Omaha Gross, and he worked at OSA, played at OSA with me. He played some professional ball, but basically just started like coaching at some Omaha schools, doing basketball. And there's a new sport, 3x3 basketball.
Yeah.
It's just half court 3-on-3 basketball. He's 6'2", and he's on the Olympic basketball team.
What?
It's him and 3 other guys. Jimmer Fredette is one of them. And then 2 other guys that are, 6'7", 6'8". But Dylan Travis is his name. And like, we're not buddies by any means, but like, I'm rooting so hard for that dude. And he wasn't a D1 basketball player. He played at Florida Southern, which is, I think they're technically D2. They might be like FCS or something.
Yeah.
Sure. But he wasn't getting scholarship offers from Kentucky and Kansas and Creighton.
No.
And now he's a freaking Olympian. That's crazy.
He's gonna play in the Olympics. And Trey Bardsley is a Wesleyan guy, one player of the year. He's 5'9" on a good day, with double socks and basketball shoes. He's 5'9", but dude could shoot from half court. Yeah, Trey Bardsley. He wore number 11. And I don't know, like we would play open gyms and stuff with him. Just nicest guy. Their family is it's 4 boys. They're awesome, but they all went to Wesleyan. All 4 Bardsley boys. And yeah, Trey I think he's on the team right below the Olympic team. So he's been doing all the traveling for like the Vegas showcase for basketball. Like Trey was out there and they like scrimmaged against the other, like the actual Olympic USA team. But it speaks to like there's all these like Olympians that weren't Division I football players, but
Nuts.
then there's Division I football players or basketball players that like can't even feed their families, you know, because
Yep.
they play 2 years, drop out, do whatever, and it's it's definitely I think NIL is kind of shifting the way that was going, where it was D1 or bust.
Yep.
And now there's so much social media, there's so much money out there, there's so many companies. I mean, here in Lincoln, Sandhills Global, the place I work, the owners of that own 1890 Initiative, which
No
is,
way.
which we do a bunch of uh, like NIL events
They
for Nebraska. And
they just announced
uh,
that if the House thing passes, they're going to bring 1890 in house. That's going to be in
yep,
like that's crazy. I didn't know that was
yeah.
there was a
And
connection there. Wow.
the CEO of 1890, his name's Carson Schott.
Hmm.
He was in my same job basically.
No
So he
kidding.
was just a sales rep,
Yeah.
traveling, meeting with clients, doing whatever. And now he's the CEO of this 1890 initiative.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean it's just funny. I mean, you kind of you dip your feet into the water and you find out like I don't know. You talk to athletes, you talk to ex NFL players, ex Husker players. We had so many connections. We were
Yeah.
pretty lucky at Concordia with the guys we were able to meet.
Yeah.
But I mean, like Teaglin is working out all the top quarterbacks in Nebraska. Any good quarterback that's came through Nebraska,
Yeah.
John Teaglin's working with them.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can go up to him and be like, "Hey, what's up?" and he remembers me.
Yeah.
He's like, "Brian Moore, what's up, dude? Like, how are you?
Crazy.
How's the family?" Like
That's awesome.
it just speaks wonders of one Nebraska, like how cool it was to grow up here. And obviously,
Yeah.
you're out in LA. It's just a different world out there.
Yeah.
Um, you're not going to run into somebody and then be like, "Hey, how's your family?"
No.
It's like, how successful are you?
I literally last night I paid for this tiniest thing in the entire world. We were getting dinner really late at night, and we saw this guy struggling on the street with paying his meter, and he was like this
Mhm.
surfer dude, and he looked like a helpless puppy. And so I walked outside and I was like, "Are you okay?" And he goes, I'm on phone with the customer service. They don't take Apple Pay." And I was like, "You don't have a card?" He's like, "No." And I like ran down and I put my card and I paid for his parking. And it was the most insane thing in his brain that ever happened. He's like, "What's happening? Are you from here?" I'm like, it was $2. Calm
Yeah, it's like
down.
$1.50.
It was so cheap, but it was just like, no, yeah, Nebraska versus pretty much anywhere else. And especially LA. LA's in this league of its own of just like, yeah, not as personal or as nice. And you're right. It's like anyone you meet, how can they take advantage of you? What do you have to offer when you meet them? Which is just
Yeah.
horrible. But
Midwest nice, that's for sure. I wanted to
yeah.
ask though, Brian, talking about the Olympics and everything of that coming
Hmm.
up. I don't know if you watched USA versus Canada a couple nights ago.
Oh yeah, I'm always
Yeah,
watching
so
basketball.
yeah. So with all that going on, did you hear? Well, of course you heard. You keep up with basketball more than me, definitely. But with Kawhi Leonard stepping away, what's your opinion
Mhm.
on that with Derek White coming through and on the team instead of Kyrie, Jalen Brown? You can go down the road there with potential, but yeah, what do you think about that Derek White situation?
Derek White's actually one of those guys that wasn't the traditional D1 route. He started at I think a JUCO in Colorado, if I remember right. But he was I think a senior, like one of my good friends from Wesleyan that I played football with. I think his name's Andrew. Andrew was either in eighth or ninth grade when Derek White was a senior, and he was like insane in high school, like just an insane basketball player. Didn't get the looks though, and it's crazy how many guys just get passed up. And it was a big high school in Colorado, but he goes the JUCO route. I'm pretty sure. You could probably check me on that. But then transfers to CU Boulder. I think played there for 1 or 2 years. I don't think he got drafted. I might be wrong, but I don't think he got drafted. and now he's going to be $100+ million player. He was probably
he
the
just had it.
third best player on a championship team, third or fourth at worst.
Yeah,
And
he just had to shave his head. That was it.
I know, dude. Yeah, that was an outstanding decision for him. But yeah, I think he's the ideal role player, like him and Drew Holiday, for that team specifically. You have so much star power, and everybody on that team, outside of maybe Anthony Davis, is the best player on their team and always has been, always will be. So the fact that you're getting Steph, LeBron, Embiid, Kawhi, KD, Devin Booker, like all these guys that have always been the best player on their team, to tell someone as good at basketball as Joel Embiid or Devin Booker or Kevin Durant to say, like, hey, you need to set better screens. Hey, you need to get rid of the ball quicker. Hey, you need to rebound. You need to box out. You need to actually dive on the floor. A guy like Derek White, I think just in the practices, guys like him, Drew Holiday, having those scrappy guys, not that they're not good basketball players, but guys that are going to kind of get into the other players, just inside of their space that makes them uncomfortable. They're okay with being role players. You can even see like the stats. Nobody's taken more than 6 shots in that game. I think LeBron might have taken 7. Steph might have taken like 6 or 7. I'm just kind of rambling right now, but I do think
Edwards was right though. And was the number 1 scorer.
Yeah,
everyone was making fun of him in that interview, but hey, I want to ask really quick while we're on this, the Dream Team, Redeem Team, and whatever they are they calling this team the Avengers team because of the last whatever, that's what the social media thing is. They say the Avengers, whatever they want to make the media control of it. But out of these 3 USA teams of Dream, Redeem, and Current right now, what's your order of best team? First and last.
Well, context always matters. I think you can see that. I mean, you watch clips of like first and second grade basketball players that can hit step back threes. Like in the context of history of any sport, like evolution is real. So if you're to match up this team where every single player on the floor can hit at least 35-40% of their threes, and statistically those shots are higher percentage, they're more efficient, etc. You can have more spacing on the floor. Defensively, you could probably say that the Dream Team in '92 was probably better than this team defensively, but it all has to be in context of that year in history. In '92, versus the competition of the world, there also wasn't an Embiid that could have played for France. There wasn't Victor Wembanyama. There wasn't Luka. There wasn't Jokic. There wasn't Giannis. There wasn't all these. Canada even has Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jamal Murray, who's won a championship.
Dylan Brooks,
I mean, like there's so many players across the world now that have access to social media that like can actually watch basketball games, that have internet access.
This is the most stacked worldwide we've had. Like,
oh yeah,
like
and I think this USA team is probably, they're still probably going to run through everybody. We just watched them go against Canada, and you have Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid matching up with Kelly Olynyk and Dwight Powell. Like, those are fringe NBA players versus the 2 best centers in the league. And that's the second best team in the world, probably. So, in context, if you just line up team versus team, this team is far more talented than any other team that's probably stepped foot on a USA basketball floor. But, I mean, you can't argue with the '92 Dream Team. It's tough to argue with that. And then you also got the '08 team with Kobe, Melo, LeBron, Chris Paul at his peak. I think Dwight Howard was on that team, Chris Bosh. I mean, that team, Dwayne Wade, yeah. I mean, that team alone has probably 4 of the top 25 players all time. So I don't know. It's tough to say, but I mean,
I get your
talent
answer,
for
but I
talent,
feel like you're dodging that question. But I'll let that slide. That's cool though.
talent for talent, I would take this team. I would take this
Yeah.
year's team for sure.
Alec, you got to answer that.
I agree 100% on it's like the whole argument, when we get into like the greatest of all time and people there's an account, I'm not on Twitter anymore, but when I was, there's an account dedicated to Jordan's competition in his prime. And it's just like him just running by like UPS drivers basically. And
We done with the 90s.
We're done with the 90s. But like that doesn't take away like Jordan's greatness and like what Jordan did or anything. Like I'm not like saying like Jordan's not the greatest or or maybe he's not. But yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with this team. I mean, well, this team hasn't actually won gold yet, so we can't really say that yet because like if they don't, then like this take is pretty stupid. But
it takes one game, man. With
so
how many threes get shot. I mean, if Serbia goes out again, I mean, first game. I mean, there's obviously pool play, but Serbia is the first game for the U.S. You're playing against the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic, and he just shed Victor Wembanyama and Gobert, who are the two best big men, probably defensively in the world.
Okay, no. That take, I hate the Gobert defensive player of the year thing. We're not doing that right now.
All right.
That's
in international basketball, there's no defensive 3 seconds. You have two 7-foot, you got a 7'5" guy and a 7'3" guy that are clogging the paint, and Jokic still put up 20 points on efficient shooting and a bunch of assists and whatever. So
all I'm
I
gonna
think
say
is
1
assist.
The defensive player of the year is the reason his team didn't go to the finals. Well, not the only reason, but the last play, he got matched up against Luka on the last play. Listen, if you're defensive player of the year, that's a strong title.
Sure.
And he got cooked. He got stepped back against Luka on the last play. Now I'm a Gobert hater. I'm gonna tell you right now, and it's the Gobert hate started on 2020 when he started the whole COVID thing, when he started wiping the tables, and they canceled the league. Yeah, so it might not have to do anything with it had nothing to do probably with this game, but when the NBA like kind of canceled for 3-4 months after that or whatever happened, the Gobert hate started, and since then, it's been a downhill for there. But
that's fair.
Yeah,
it's fair. But yeah, I'm excited for the Olympics. I mean, I'm excited for the 3x3, and then watching USA versus all those other teams, see if they actually stack up to the other historic US teams is gonna be fun. And then there's the whole Jaylen Brown saga with him beefing with Nike. Did you guys see that?
That's what I was asking about.
They picked Derek White over Jaylen Brown because Nike runs it, and Jaylen and Nike, I guess, don't have a great relationship. I don't know all the details. But I mean, he's kind of saying it has to do with money, which I mean, money in sports that's an interesting conversation anytime that comes up. But I don't know. Finals MVP didn't get a spot on the team.
Is 3x3? Is this the first year it's gonna be in the Olympics?
Yeah, I think they. Wow. I think either last year or 2022 they debuted it in FIBA. Which is just like the International Basketball Association. So I think there was a FIBA tournament that either was last year or 22, but this is the first Olympics, obviously, that it's like an official Olympic sport. But yeah, man, I mean, I'm pumped for Dylan. And I've seen highlights and stuff from it, and it's just crazy to me that, a guy that we were just coaching basketball camps with, like, you would have never known that dude was going to be an Olympic basketball player, and now he could legit. They're the number two team in the world according to like the world rankings. Wow. I think he said, I forget who the number 1 team is. I think it might be Serbia. But yeah, if they can come out with a gold medal, that'd be sick.
That'd be awesome. You could know you would personally know an Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah,
that's nuts. That's really
Be
nice.
sick.
That's awesome. Nice. Sweet. Let's talk about EA Sports and NCAA college football. I just
Oh
saw,
yeah.
was it yesterday or 2 days ago? Did they say it's the 14, how many, has it been 11 years or what? It was 2014 was last year. So it's been what, 11 years now? 11
Yep.
years since the game has come out. And it was that was like 2
Mhm.
days ago was the anniversary or whatever, that it's like, it's been that long, which by the way, massive missed opportunity. Why wouldn't you release it on the anniversary that it went away? That's all I'm saying. But yeah. How much do you guys think this is going to change people's lives? I know that's a huge question, but what do you? I mean, as a student athlete, what do you think from your perspective as a former student athlete? What would what do we see this changing for players, if anything?
I think for one, the player notoriety is going to go through the roof. Because I remember just playing the NCAA football game. By the first game, because growing up in Nebraska, you just are a Husker fan. Like, you don't have another choice. Even if that's not your favorite team, you're going to go to Husker games. You're going to watch Husker games. Like, the state shuts down on Saturdays. It's 13 weeks straight of nothing goes on Saturdays other than Husker
Accurate.
games. But you're not just going to know. I mean, like the last couple of years, you know the quarterback, you know the running backs, you usually know the receivers. But I mean, Husker fans in Nebraska, like me personally doing a dynasty, I'm going to know who is the fourth best kick returner on Nebraska. I'm going to know who the seventh string corner is. Like,
Yeah.
because your second string is going to get hurt and then you're going to have to start recruiting. And you're like, it takes your fandom to just a whole new level. And Madden just doesn't do the same thing because there's not 1,000 football players in the NFL.
Yep.
There's 300 and whatever.
Yep.
Or how many NFL football players are there actually? It's
2,000.
65 to a team.
Yeah.
Times 32. Okay.
Yeah. It's like right
And
under 2,000, I think. And the practice squad is like,
players are there going to be?
Oh my gosh, so much.
100 times 100 ish. 100 times 130. There's going to be 15,000 college football players in that game.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a
It's
lot.
insane. But like,
Well, they're gonna
and
be
not even just
600.
Nebraska. You're gonna know who the safety is on Northwestern because you throw a pick and you're like, how did he get to that? You're gonna know who backup quarterbacks are. Like, you don't. If you were to ask someone last year who's the backup quarterback on Iowa State, who in the right mind other than Iowa State fans are gonna know? But now, as a Nebraska fan, and even with NIL, it's like, well, I actually want that backup quarterback for Iowa State to transfer to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to get him in the portal, and I just think it's going to be cool to see college football fandom come back.
Yeah.
Not that it has died off, but like
just a whole new element. This is
people opting out of bowl games. Bowl games have been dog shit lately. Like, other than the playoff game, that's why they're expanding playoffs, because it's not making the money that it used to. We don't see the Boise State Oklahoma game in the Fiesta Bowl like on 07 or whatever the year was with the Statue of Liberty play. Like, there's all those memories that like our age range, like older Gen Z people that like grew up playing video games. The players, you're watching the games, there's like the nostalgia to it. And I've even heard of like grandparents getting on the game again because like they want to get to know the players, and they're going to join a dynasty with their kid, and their grandkids, and it's like it's just going to be it's going to sell a record amount of copies because of the 11 years, and I don't see any negativity out of the situation. Once the NIL stuff got passed and money can actually be distributed to players because of it, I mean, it's a game changer. I think it's going to change college football.
I was trying to describe like how big of a deal this game was to my fiance, and she's like, why is this such a big deal? I don't understand. I was like, people are quitting their jobs to play this game. Like, that's how big of a deal this is, that like it hasn't been around for over a decade and people are so excited that, like, obviously not, there's not like a ton of people quitting their jobs, but like, I'm just like, I know that for a fact people have quit their jobs because they're like, I'm going to play this for 3 months straight and do nothing else. It's such a big deal. That's interesting you bring up payments, because the standard agreement for a player who wanted to opt into the game got paid $600. There was a report that was released not too long ago that Arch Manning had originally opted out of being in the game, and the report came out that he was paid north of $50,000 to $60,000 to be in the game. Yeah. So do you, I mean, I don't know. Try to put yourself in the shoes of a left tackle of a Utah player. Is $600 fair to be in a video game? Like, do you feel like the compensation that all of these players, because you're right, there's thousands of them, and if you want to be opted in, you get paid $600 and a free copy of the game. Is that fair? And if not, what would be fair compensation for someone who wants, you know, a video game company who, by the way, is going to make 10x their money on what they did to develop and pay the players and everything that they've gone through? They're still going to bring in so much money. So is there an element that $600 wasn't fair? Is there an element where one player getting $60,000 ruins it for everyone else? Like, what is, in terms of payment and compensation for players in this age of NIL, is $600 enough for players to be in the game? Thoughts?
It's a loaded question, because I think if for some reason they wanted to add D3 schools to NCAA football, like, do you think any Nebraska Wesleyan player wouldn't do it for free?
Yeah.
You know, so the privilege level of somebody saying that that's, you know, not enough. But I think that, like I was saying, like the notoriety that those players are going to get from being on that game is worth way more than $600. So you're not actually, by saying no and opting out, you're risking like potentially tens of thousands of dollars in NIL potential. And not even just your own school or your own donors to your school or whatever, but like potential transfer spots. Like, it's free publicity. Like, and on top of that, they're giving you, hey, here's just $600 just to say yes,
and a free copy of the game. Yeah.
I don't know. They didn't even need to pay players, I don't think. But they could have paid them more. And that's the thing. It's like, where do you draw the line of what is fair when you're paying players? It's why NIL is such a big topic and such a big industry right now, is because what is fair?
Yeah. Who
defines what's fair?
My only counter to that would be some type of rev share, because for historically over a century, the NCAA got away with saying, well, this is fair. You're getting a full ride scholarship. You're getting way more getting a full ride scholarship than you would ever make profiting on your NIL. This is fine. You can't profit on it. You know, we're giving you what you're due and more. Be grateful. And we did that for over 100 years. And then I got to the point where it's like, nope, that's actually not fair. Like, just getting a scholarship isn't nearly worth how much you're bringing in, because the NCAA was raking in billions of dollars. And so, do I think that's going to happen with this game? I don't know. I don't think they're going to bring in, you know, such an insane amount of money that it's like, wow, you only got $600 for a game that netted, you know, $1 billion. I honestly don't know. Where it like remains to be seen how well this game does, and if there's another iteration of this. Interesting to see how people react to what the next offer is on the table of like, hey, this did so well when we came out with it in 2024 and we paid you $600. We're going to do it again, and this time we're going to pay you X. Like, does that change, or is this going to be another, you know, decades long thing where it's like, be grateful. You got $600 in a free game. I don't know. It's interesting, that juxtaposition between like what athletes were compensated with their athletic scholarships in comparison of fairness. Yeah. Cause like, what is fair? What is fair?
Yeah. I think the whole, what Brian said, like the privilege aspect of like players like willing to just do it for free just because of everyone knowing the hype around the game, and just like the opportunity of just being in the game itself is enough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I know from someone that is a backup player to Jalen Milroe, like getting the same compensation, apparently, I mean, when you're in college and you're already like, it's not like the whole fairness question. It's like Jalen Miller is going to get his fair share outside of VA, So I think it's just the
Yeah.
opportunity itself of being in the game, because it's not just a game. It's it's like the whole aspect of like growing up, like, oh, it feels like childhood almost, and it's, you get to be part of that again, and it's bigger than a paycheck, it's bigger than a money dollar bill, and it's, yeah. And I think having this game come out next week, and it's making college football way more hype, like coming into the
100%.
season, and it has been for the last, I don't know how many years. And I know like college football's been great, like year in and year out, but something about this year, this off season, I mean, it's something in the air right now is just different, and it hasn't been like this in a long time. And also with the college football playoffs coming in, just being brand new in that aspect, that's special too. And I'm excited to see how that plays. Um, a little, a little upset with like the Big 12, like a Big 12 team getting a free bye, to like the playoffs, like having either like Colorado or Kansas probably have the best chance of like winning that, which is, I don't know, and then having like the SEC and Big Ten just be like powerhouses, now with everyone kind of moving over to that. But it's still exciting because now, like, coming into end of fall and winter this upcoming year, it's going to be so electric. We'll all of us sitting down to watch that, like, going into that. But Brian, what are your thoughts on the playoffs, of how it's set? Do you think it's enough teams, or do you think they need to, even in the future, expand more to what it's already at?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think if you look at the numbers, viewership and engagement, since the first playoff, I think is way down for the average fan. I mean, unless you're like a diehard Nebraska fan, like you're not watching, like nobody really watches the Dave Portnoy Bowl, or the
Snoop
State
Dogg,
Farm Bowl.
whatever.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the bowl games have, once you add a postseason that basically doesn't matter anymore in terms of bowl games. Like nobody watches the NIT tournament in college basketball because it technically doesn't matter. It doesn't count, people would say. And you see so many players opting out of bowl games to, get ready for the draft or combine or whatever. And I think I don't know why I've gone back to this, but the Incredibles quote, where if everybody is super, then nobody is super.
That's a good quote.
And if everybody, like, the more you expand playoffs, the less special it becomes. And people go to college basketball like, yeah, March Madness is awesome. Like nobody can deny that having 68 teams playing a 6-round tournament isn't awesome in single elimination. But I think the more you're adding playoff games, the less special week 2 Alabama versus Texas is, because you can lose that game and you can still make the playoffs. And then even the SEC championship last year, Georgia and Alabama, it was it was kind of assumed to Georgia, like, hey, if you lose this, you're still probably going to get in the playoff. So it lessens the hype, and I think the college football game will help. I think I'm going to tune into LSU versus Florida in a lot higher capacity than I would have last year because I'm probably going to know more of the players,
Yeah.
and I think the engagement of that is, yeah, going back to if the 600 is worth it. I mean it's going to be crazy to see. Like I'm curious to see how the TV ratings kind of show up for just like the first week of college football. So I think there are. I mean, when I was 6 years old, I didn't even understand how football worked.
Mm-mm.
But you bet your ass I was playing college football video games and doing double safety blitzes and putting it on rookie difficulty and just throwing Hail Marys. Like, yeah, like there's going to be 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds and 4-year-olds that are going to be playing this game that don't even know how football works, but they're going to play it. And then you might not see the immediate results of that, but 5 years later, they're going to be like, hey, Dad, can we fly to Florida like I did for my 11th birthday to watch Tim Tebow play Florida State?
Yeah.
Like, would I have done that if I never played college football video games? Probably not.
Yeah.
Like, probably not. So I don't know. I'm going back to the playoffs. I think how it was with the BCS was fine. I think fine tuning it is okay, but I think the more selective you get with a playoff, the higher stakes every game becomes. And I feel like regular season is going to turn into college basketball regular season the more they expand it, where you're not even going to want to tune into Georgia versus Alabama until the fourth quarter because if Georgia goes 9-3, they could still probably get the 20th seed in a 20 or 32 team playoff, which it's going to happen. I mean, the playoffs are going to expand because NCAA, it's all about money, and they're going to say, well, the playoffs is the only thing making money. It's like, oh, I wonder why the playoffs is the only thing making money now. It's because you've
12 team right now, right?
Yeah.
12, I think.
Is this the first year of 12?
Yeah, I think it's 12.
Yeah. So I think it'll be newness is always fun. Newness sells. So
the ratings will be out the roof this year.
Oh yeah,
it's the first year.
In the first year of the playoffs, first couple of years were like outstanding. That was when Florida State and Oregon and like I don't know, it was awesome. Anything new is awesome. But we've been at 10 years of a 14 playoff, and everybody's like, oh, we're a little bored. We should double it or triple it, and then sooner than later we're gonna be at 64 teams in a single elimination tournament.
Yeah. Do you think there's a drop off? Because I was talking to a couple of buddies about this. Do you think there's a drop off between let's put like top tier teams like Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, we get Oregon this year, like the teams that are probably always like in the last 10 years in that talk, in the top four. Do you think there's a drop off between those four teams and then from your 9th and 10th through 20th, rank, AP rank? So like where I'm coming at is talent wise, team wise, are those, I mean, those, of course, people, this first couple of years, people are going to watch regardless because the hype, Is there a chance? Yes, there's always a chance on the football field, but is it realistic? With a Georgia playing, a
BYU,
UCF,
Utah State,
So that's like because at the end of the day, you got an NFL offensive defensive line against underdog story, which I love to see. I'm still tuning into that, regardless. But is it close, in your opinion, to like even be competition and competitive, as in those 5-6 selective like top dogs compared to the rest of the pool, in your opinion?
I think it's getting. I think the dynasty era. I mean, what Georgia's doing right now is kind of insane. When you see schools like Ohio State and Alabama, and I mean, Oregon has unlimited money basically
Yep.
from the
Phil
Nike
Knight.
founder, and they're still not they're still not competing with Georgia right now. Nobody's really competing with Georgia right now. Um, but I think, and you can see it in other sports. Like there's been multiple times a 1 seed in college basketball has lost to a 16 seed. The tournament's been around for how long? And the first time just happened 3 years ago, and then it happened again last year. You know, and so I think the talent gap and kind of what we were talking about with just recruiting is there's so many good athletes out there, like so many good athletes, and football's a little tougher because the difference between a 5-star D lineman and a walk on or a 2 or 3-star D lineman or O lineman or whatever the matchup is, like in the trenches, there's still a gap there. But in skill positions, I mean, you're seeing guys that are coming from these tiny schools that are just a little undersized, but they have better footwork, like Wes Welker, Danny Amendola. I mean, Lad McConkey, ironically, went to Georgia, but he's this short white dude that he was a second-round pick. He's probably going to be one of the best rookie receivers in the league. Um, so I don't know. I think the talent gap is going to be more of an even playing field than it has been with like the run of Alabama and Clemson. I mean, Clemson's already fallen off. Georgia is eventually going to fall off. I mean, I think we're going to see more parity in college football over the next 10 years than we did the last 10 years, like by far. So I think the playoff in that sense is, I think it'll get more competitive between the 1 and 20, or the 2 and 19, or whatever the seeds end up being. So, but yeah, I think it'll be a good start to see how 12 works.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be interesting. You mentioned Oregon's unlimited NIL. Like, obviously, rebuilding or even building a dynasty does not take a week or 2 weeks or a year or 2 years. So it's like that just got announced. I'm so curious to see how this plays out. Like, is this going to be the first instance of a school widely and openly saying we have unlimited money, bring us the best players, and like what is the fruits of that? What's going to happen? I'm so curious to see how that actually plays out, and like, can they get people who would have never ever thought like, oh, I'm going to go to Oregon, but like now they're offering me $100,000 to go there. Like, yeah, I'll go to Oregon. And then what do people care about more? Like, do they care about getting their bag, or do they care about winning immediately? Like, they know that if they go to an Alabama or a Georgia, they're like significantly higher chance of making any waves with actual like meaningful wins. Or are they like, nope, I'm going to negate all of that for at least a few years because I'm going to make $250,000 to go play for Oregon. It's going to be interesting, and it's not going to be, I don't think, immediately apparent. I think it's going to take a while to actually see the effects of something that drastic. But also, I think it's interesting. We talked about this last week with the whole House versus NCAA is like, Oregon is sort of picking the perfect time to do this because they're going to introduce a league-wide salary cap, technically speaking, that schools who are going to be doing revenue sharing are not going to be able to spend more than what the current bill has, or the current settlement has, is $22 million. So Oregon right now can say we have unlimited NIL money, but then if the settlement goes through, then technically speaking, the school will be capped at 22 million. So I think they're picking a good time to say, like, open up the pocketbook. We have everything, and how many people can they get to come? It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that specific story of just, I mean, Phil Knight's, I think, worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. So he has no
Yeah.
it's gonna be an endless checkbook writing of every single player they can get that they think is worth it. They're gonna have the money for it. Which
I mean, this last
it's gonna be
offseason was like literally like Oregon had a great offseason, which now they're 5th pre-ranking. I think they're a top 5 or 6 team right now. Oregon is, and they have been in the past, but like they're not consistent like Georgia and like Alabama every year. But they have their years. They stayed relevant. But bringing like Dylan Gabriel, he's probably the biggest headline. And Oregon wasn't the only one coming at him. I think Ohio State and at least 3 other schools, there's an example right there. I think, I'm not saying money was everything probably for Dylan Gabriel, but I'm sure that had a big part to play on maybe him going to Eugene. I don't know. I mean, I guess it also works with your, what's your best fit, the team, the talent, the coaching staff, all of that. Of course, I'm not taking that away, but yeah, I think that's an example, I think, of coming up this year of not just Dylan Gabriel, but they got some raw talent. They're going to be good this year. And I'm curious if this team continues to keep moving in that momentum especially with how much money Oregon has. Cause they look good this season.
Yeah. 247 and ESPN have, Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, and then Oregon number 4.
Yeah.
So
it's
an interesting top 4.
It is. I think Ohio State's the best team in college football. Hot take. Depending on the quarterback position, I don't know how that's going to work out, but
Will Howard,
I think
K-State, is that who it is?
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be that person to win a national championship for Ohio State. I'm not even an Ohio State fan, but across the board, like position by position, like Ohio State is. I mean, I think it helped when they got Caleb Downs from Alabama, because their defense was already like a top 5 defense, and then they got Caleb Downs, which is probably, I don't know, probably the best safety in college football. That was insane. And plus, they got the 2 of the best running backs in college football. I mean, Jonathan Edwards. They got Neal from Kansas. But I mean, the top 100 rankings for NCAA came out, and Ohio State's running backs, I forget Henderson. I forget the other one's name. I mean, that's sickening because he's a top 5 running back in the game, and he transferred over. But he's 95 overall. They got like 2 95, 96 overall players just in their running back, depth chart, which is like, as a Nebraska fan, I'm like, I wish.
It is funny that we can do that now. Is like for the last 10 years, it's all objective. There's no overalls tied to players. And now it's
it matters now.
Oh, well, Dylan Raiola is only an 80 overall. Like he's gonna be an 87 overall by week 4. It's so funny. I love that.
Someone asked me this morning, what do you think the highest Nebraska player was? And I thought it'd be either Gifford or Tommy Hill. I found out I think it's Tommy Hill. Tommy Hill's 89, which makes sense. I mean, he's solid corner. But yeah.
I love how we're such dumb animal species that we have to tie an overall rating to like how good a player is. Like with 2K,
dude, I love
it's
it.
like, what's Ronnie's overall gonna be? And everybody's like, oh no. It's so funny to me. Like, who cares? Like, obviously we care, but like, it's just it's hilarious to me that players are tweeting out, damn, Ronnie 2K, I'm really an 81 overall. That's it, bro. I was an 83 last year. That's just funny to me.
Ronnie 2K's got some serious hate, man. He's got to be on watch. That dude's been on blast for like, I don't know, 15 years. Hey, in all seriousness, though, you after this, you need to join our dynasty. I know we have like a 20-person dynasty for Xbox.
I'm in.
Online.
Dude, honestly, literally any dynasty I can join, I will play in it.
Yeah, we're trying to get as much people.
I've had like 100 people be like, hey, yo, want to join my dynasty? I just say yes to every
Yes.
single person,
The answer is yes.
and I'll fill it out.
Yeah, no, good. We're trying to figure out the details
Not
of
like
how that will
fantasy.
work. But yeah.
I have to cap my fantasy leagues at, I think 3 is the most I'll do. But this year for NCAA Dynasty,
Unlimited
don't matter.
dynasties.
Add me in. I'm the Phil Knight of NCAA Dynasties. I have unlimited amount of time for Dynasty. There is no limit to how many Dynasty leagues I'll play in.
Plot twist, Brian also quit his job to play this game. He just hasn't told anyone yet.
My family doesn't know yet.
Content creator.
We're moving in with Bob and Rhonda.
Yeah.
Selling the house.
Oh, man. All right, fellas. Well, that was fun. Brian, thank you so much for jumping on a short notice. It was a pleasure having you as our first guest. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. That's it. Bye.